Yeah, so I mean, looking at the Tempest, you know, if you're familiar with the original trilogy, there was a pretty big shoes to fill with the Normandy. So I think where we came, we're touching it.
Yeah.
As you know, if you played the game before, there was the galaxy map. So a big thing for us was the whole experience of space, because this is a science fiction game in space. With that, you know, when we were looking at it, we wanted to keep elements that we were familiar with the galaxy map, but push it further. Looking at the Frostbite engine and where we were, we really wanted to create this visual, stunning experience. It's immersive. You know, as you can see, when you go into it, it's not necessarily the in-game UI. You would walk up into the middle of the ship and just look at the UI and fly a ship around. This is, we are at the front of the ship on the bridge, and we are interacting with space. It's a lot more engaging. Probably one of the best parts we've got is as you fly around the galaxy, when you go to different locations, you get the experience of actually moving through the system. You'll be passing asteroid fields, different planets, sailing through moons.
One of the things we tried to focus on the art side was actually making space feel as volumetric and dense as possible without it just seeming like a skybox. So as you fly through space, you'll see there's a lot of nebulas and a lot of you know, solar or different types of anomalies that you can pass through, all to give a sense of density to the space experience.
So one of the things we were really excited about with this and the new design of the Tempest was when you travel to different locations, once you exit the galaxy map, what you see outside the window is the location you just flew to. And what's really different with the Tempest is because we have different windows, when you actually leave, you can walk around. There's, in the meeting room, is a 360 panorama, so you could just look around and see this location you're at. So,
or if you want to have a romance.
Or if you have a romance.
In your Pathfinder's quarters, you might want to park it outside the blue nebula instead of the pink nebula.
Got my backdrop.
Right?
We're good for sexy times.
It's an actual thing.
Sexy times. And there
like you see here, we're actually here orbiting this red sun, totally different system.
And that was actually one of the key elements for the design of the Tempest itself, was trying to give as much open space so you can see out into external space as possible. Previously with the Normandy, we intentionally didn't have any windows because we didn't have the same kind of technology that we have in Frostbite. So a lot of those windows were closed off or very minimal, so you would just kind of see some shimmer outside of that window. But for our game, because we are focused a lot more on exploration, we wanted to open that up as much as possible. So we tried to present, you know, windows along the whole front of the cockpit of the Tempest, at the back, you know, in your Pathfinder's quarters. And that actually applied to the characters as well in Andromeda. You know, a lot of our helmets now have the sense of an open visor, which is meant to be kind of an exploration visor rather than how we had it previously in the trilogy, where they're all combat visors, very metallic and closed in.
So by this point in the game, you've done a lot of cool stuff with Liam. You and him are buds. You know, you've explored the galaxy a little bit together, and you've kind of built up some trust and a good relationship with him. So at a certain point in time, he comes to you, and as a good squad mate does, needs your help. So that sets up this mission roughly. And then you have to obviously travel to this area, this debris field, which then kicks it off.
And Liam has a plan. You'll hear about the plan as you play the later level and how well that plan goes.
Liam is sort of your colonial specialist.
All right,
He's
set to go.
He helps you found
Somewhere. This is on me. I'll take care of it. Any sign of the pirates who took my contact?
There's too much background radiation. Could be anything hiding out there. All that debris in orbit.
That tracks. Heard they were scavengers. I'd hoped Bradley or some of our colonists would follow. Join in.
We'll make do with what we've got. What's the plan?
Somewhere out there is a ship full of pirates. They might have our specs.
Thanks to you.
Yes, thanks to me. So we can't go in hot. I say we play to their scavenger routes with that debris. I'll explain in the airlock. We've wasted enough time. Let's hit the go button, shoot pirates, and save people. We've got this.
Kathleen?
Don't get cocky, Ian.
Okay.
So at this point, if you don't want to have spoilers, you have to close your eyes for the next 20 minutes.
Here's to.
We play this right, they'll deliver us just where we need to go. I have a plan.
One of the things we were also playing up quite a bit, as you saw, was just the interplay between the characters on the your crew and in the squad.
Come on. Hiding in derelict cargo to get scavenged. Sure, we don't know what we're up against. Neither do they. Trojan horse simple.
The Greeks didn't need to worry if Troy had air.
There's it. Whoa. This isn't right.
Liam, you said to expect pirates. This is a catch ship. A big one.
Change of plan? Okay, it's a catch ship. But scavenging isn't their MO.
Alarms, Liam.
Doesn't change why we're here. Find her around and get out. Somehow.
This is already a good example of how the spaces are more open.
We have stores. We have stores.
So Ian, what are you playing as right now? What's your profile set as?
I'm actually set as an adept right now. Mix of biotic abilities. You're totally gonna make me talk while I'm trying. Totally not cool, man. I also have a Sentinel build set up on a different favorite.
Cover! Cover! Oh!
Seriously?
I will never do that again.
Our lead designer.
Wow.
I'm never going to lift this one down.
Yeah.
Why'd you make this?
All right,
so hard?
part two. Someone else talk about the profiles.
Yeah.
So can we have the art director play, please?
No, you don't want that. I'll be like looking at the ceiling the whole time.
We have stores. We have stores.
Just going back to Fabrice's note, actually, about the size of some of the spacing on the catch ship. It was interesting. That was one of our challenges early on when we decided to introduce jump as one of our main. Please, Ian. Did you do that just to cut me off?
No. We,
So,
I think somebody pranked him and put it on hardcore.
No.
Did you put it in Infinity?
I can't even type with someone looking over my shoulder. I can't imagine what
As
it's
you can
like.
see, this is a cover-based shooter.
We have stores. We have stores.
Good job, Cora. She's got it back.
Yeah, Coral take care of it.
Definitely no
Just all watch and give him good thoughts.
Shut them down.
Vibes.
One of the interesting things about him dying 3 times, though, is that you'll see that you can approach each combat very differently because we have procedural cover, and because you have all the locomotion changes with the jump and the boost jets.
Nice.
Using the environment to your advantage is one of the keys to actually succeeding.
And what you just saw the beast do is actually a very good example of how we use the verticality in the space, which is also brand new with the boost, because obviously if you can jump, we want to make sure that all the enemies and squad, they can jump too, and they will track you in all those spaces. So the spaces are not only more open and bigger, but you add an entire layer of verticality to them.
Yeah, it was a big challenge early on when we decided to go that way because traditionally level design and level art get away with a lot of concessions, not having to build. If you don't have jump, you don't have to build, the tops of buildings, the tops of structures, and you could lose some detail in the upper areas of the levels. When you introduce jump, it's far more important to make sure every last piece of detail is of the same quality, on the upper areas. Make sure everything's capped off because the player could theoretically get anywhere in this level. And then again, earlier, one of the things we found the level artists and designers doing was actually building huge open arenas with nothing inside to actually manipulate or jump around. So that was one of the learning lessons, that despite having jump, you could create these giant open warehouses, but it's important to still fill them up with things that don't, so it doesn't look just like a big empty warehouse, essentially.
And you'll notice also right away how we're not anymore stop and go cover-based shooter. You don't plan to move forward from cover to cover. It's actually a way more organic use of the space.
You also notice quite a difference between the combat camera and the exploration camera, and we did that specifically because a lot of times you're exploring in open spaces, and we want to sort of give you a wider field of view so you could actually take it in, but also judge how you're going to explore in an area.
For the last time, report.
those base seals. If you idiots blew them, I'll have you stings.
Everything's under control. Just a simple weather.
I've heard that somewhere before.
Stoked. This ship is property of Talonwing. Now you're property too, just like the rest. I don't let
Well, that wasn't going anywhere useful. Shoot pirates, rescue contact?
She's here. Somewhere. Think they've salvaged this thing?
They're not Ket. Sam, do you have us?
Not precisely, Pathfinder. Debris and radiation are still disrupting scans.
So where to?
Find Rand and fast. This way. Got that one. Stop there. Let's go. Fight to the door they came in.
We're sure the captains are there?
Has to be somewhere. I think I've heard of this Kala and his wing. Supposed to be small time.
The ship says different.
Lucky find?
They're hostiles.
Oh, that's my favorite. I love that.
So you saw Ian just did a couple biotic combos there. So obviously that's still in the game.
That's fun. I bet you jump, do a pound for melee damage. Feels so good.
One of the things you'll hear a lot too is we've really doubled down on the squad banter, both in combat and just in the missions as well. I was telling someone earlier, we have, compared to Mass Effect 3, for those of you familiar, we had about 670 unique characters, I think, in Mass Effect 3. We've got over 1,200 in Mass Effect Andromeda. And if you look at just the line count, it's like putting Mass Effect 2 and 3 together. So we didn't just go and make, bigger worlds to explore, we filled those worlds. And the squad banter is actually some of my favorite moments in the game. And it's always fun to take different people with you, hear what they have to say.
And combinations, because they always...
Thanks, Courtney.
They have clear relationships with each other. Like, for example, Cora and Drac give each other shit all the time and that sort of thing.
Door sealed. Override from the console? Come on! We have to find Varant!
We don't even know if this is the way.
Well, something has to go right. You take a risk for the right reason. It's supposed to work. Ugh.
Angsty.
You dent your locker, the principal will be pissed.
It isn't a joke. I jumped us here blind. We don't know where anyone is or how anything works. And now we're fighting some asshole who wants everyone chained. It's like hitting Andromeda all over again.
Seal the bed.
Don't make this about the whole mission. We're here to help, but why am I the one defending your plan?
I don't know.
I will not be ignored anymore.
See? Total asshole.
That's it. Space the talent we come. I will not be ignored.
Such an asshole. Shit!
I really hate this plan, Liam.
Right now? Me too.
Burning!
Get on the junctions. Go.
These space sequences. Actually, I'll wait till more.
Oogie! You have timing!
We would have come in sooner, but we didn't know how we could help. Settlers aren't soldiers, but a wreck of a ship with bad shielding? We've got engineers, son. Oh, power surge. This beast does not like being prodded.
Is the artificial plan? Shit! Everything's shifting!
Liam, Pathfinder, are you okay?
So,
We're here, but things have gone a little sideways.
Get to engineering.
so those space sequences were a lot of fun to work on. Ken Thane, our cinematic director, isn't here right now, But I worked with him specifically on those exterior sequences with him and his team. And the fun thing about those was they were done like in a pre-rendered type way, a more traditional kind of cut scene type way, which allows you to have a little bit more control over the lighting, over color palettes and subtle nuances and that kind of thing. Frostbite's a very powerful engine, but it comes with a lot of technical hurdles and some limitations. But it was nice to be able to do those space scenes in a more traditional compositing way, because you get a little bit more play. You get a few more tools in your tool belt to render those guys.
So this level is a perfect example of something we couldn't have done in the trilogy without jump, without the ability to move in the vertical. It's, there's crates and boxes everywhere for you to kind of scale over. There's different puzzles that kind of exist in this level based on your ability to jump.
Which way?
Climb up there. Turn on us a new exit.
We're getting real lucky, Liam.
It's also a good showcase of the scale of the level we're talking and the space and how far we can see and the level of details that we can put in those levels.
That little blue thing that's following Ian, that's because he has an adept profile on. If you have an infiltrator profile, that'll be kind of like the cloaking type effect. So we have little visual cues of what makes each profile special.
Good example of favorites.
Do you have favorites, Ian?
Yeah, I've actually switched over here to a Sentinel favorite. With the Sentinel, I have tech armor that'll pop up whenever I take damage, and I have a couple of different abilities mapped.
That's one of the things we've talked about, is that you can actually create up to 4 different groups of favorites, and that allows you to have 3 powers and 1 profile assigned to it, and you can just switch on the fly when you're fighting. So if you want your Vanguard profile, Vanguard playstyle, or you want your infiltrator, or you just want to be a soldier, you can actually switch right on the fly. You can also just stick to one if you want it.
Open the pause
you have to
menu
build
quick,
it though over time, right?
Yep.
Open the pause menu quick. Just go to the skills in the pause menu, so we could show that off a little bit. So you can choose from each of those 3 trees: biotics, tech, combat, and you put points based on what power is important to you, and the number of points that you put into each of these trees. So as you can see, Ian has 4 profiles unlocked, and he can switch between those as he wants to.
It's a much more, one of the things we really wanted to embrace was a sort of sense of freedom. It was exploration, again, one of the themes of the game. We wanted you to feel like you could explore any power, any skill set, and not be restricted by a choice you'd made at the beginning of the game, but then also reward you for those choices that you make as you go, and that's where the profiles came in.
I thought this was a minor group of pirates.
A ship like this would really bring in recruits.
Light import. Report.
Get framework and guard patch job. 40% functional at best. Partially stripped.
Parted out, then dumped. A junker.
It's a good example of our use of space again, outside the level. How did you guys approach, Kathleen, writing the, for a new character, for new protagonists especially, our writers, versus writing for Shepard?
The thing about Shepard was that because Shepard evolved over 3 games, it was, by the end you could hear Jennifer Hale or Mark Meer in your head as you were writing them. And so it was a challenge to start with someone fresh and new. I mean, it's always exciting to start with a blank page, but it is a bit of a challenge as well. But because of the, some of the lighter tones we were going with in the game, we had the freedom to make them a bit more of a, of a wise ass at times, or, not just the super soldier that Shepard is.
And that actually, translates over for those of you who haven't been following. The Paragon Renegade system, we don't use that anymore. That was very much something that was felt like it was a part of Shepard. Now we do a tone system where you have 4 different types of tones. So if you don't want to be the wise ass, you can also be the professional if you want, or you can be more of the person who's leaps before they look, or vice versa, right? Somebody who's just more of a thinker. In addition to that, we've also, for decisions and consequence, we often wrap them around sort of an agree-disagree And the reason we want to do that is actually something we looked at doing on the trilogy early on, and then we moved away from it. But I like it because, you know, with Paragon Renegade, you kind of know once you just decide what your playthrough is going to be, well, it's up and to the right for the rest of the game. Agree, disagree changes depending on, you know, whether you're talking... What the question is, right? And who you're talking to. And it kind of keeps you more involved in the game, and it just feels more like you're role-playing.
You guys just saw Ian shoot through some destructible pieces. We've got elements of destructible cover as well as part of the overall combat experience. It's not everywhere, you won't see it everywhere, but a lot of the cover pieces are destructible, so you can you know, bypass cover by just kicking it open.
Is giving them trouble. Even ground for everyone.
One of our big challenges on the art team for developing Andromeda was coming up with the different races and palettes that we use to build out those races. You know, and a lot of work goes into building that out. Not just in terms of building a character. You have to build their architectural design. You have to build their culture. You know, what kind of customs do they abide by? So a lot of work and thought goes into exactly what that is. You know, even down to their alphabet. We have fonts for each one of our alien races.
And this is an interesting mismatch because this is Ket architecture, this is a Ket ship, and our outlaw faction here, the Talons, are made up of the Angara species.
Yeah. That's what I was getting to. It was an interesting challenge with Liam Loyalty trying to graft those two styles together. Because obviously when you're designing a lot of these palettes early in development, you don't know quite how they're going to be used across the whole span of the game. And when we came up with the idea for Liam Loyalty, having this kind of hybrid of the two palettes, it was a really fun challenge for the level artists to try and, you know, piece all that together and kit bash that together.
Yeah, so we're looking at the Outlaw faction, and it's actually one faction within the Outlaw palette, the enemy palette. I don't know, Fabrice, if you want to talk more about some of the other enemy palettes that we've got in the game. We've got quite a wide variety, plus wildlife now.
Yeah, I think and it's not only about the amount of palette, but the amount of roles also that we have as enemies. So each palette has specific components. Some of palette decline also into sub roles and sub specific things. But overall, we took two sides to build all that. Is the same idea of exploration. So we want to make sure that not only you can discover enemies that have specific gameplay purposes, but that it is something that you're going to learn over time and not necessarily obvious. But also they have very, very specific roles that takes into account the new layouts and the new way that the combat is. So you saw, for example, the quadruped, the Addy several times pushing Ian out of cover, the destructible cover. Some of the enemies also not only target you, but will target destructible cover when it's there to force you to move on. And some of them also occupy really the three-dimensional space, including the verticality. Some of them will ignore cover. So there's really a wide variety in each palette, and we also try to the enemy from each palette are also consistent with their own race and how they behave, the type of action they take, and how also tactically they attack you. Overall, also because with switch to a new engine, then you have to redo the AI, for example. So the enemy AI in general is way more powerful and has to adapt to a way more dynamic environment as you saw. So.
One of the mechanics that you might have seen there too is there's a little HUD at the top, and it starts blinking and blinking faster and faster. Because it's a game of exploration, sometimes we don't point you right to the next objective. We actually want you to search and find it. So we actually have sort of a hot-cold mechanic for locating things that you know are in a certain radius, but you're not sure are there.
Can you pull up the scanner there quick, Ian? So as part of those tools, you obviously have the scanner. We've talked about this a little bit before, but it allows you to kind of scan the environment for new and interesting things. And it also is directly built into our research and development mechanic. So if you see those three icons at the bottom, they represent different kinds of research data. One from the Milky Way, one from Helios, and one from the unknown remnant at this point. And so you can go through the world and scan different things to kind of gather research information on the various types, and then you can use those later to craft things.
And when we talk about exploration, that's a good reminder that it's not only about the physical exploration or the exploration of territories. We're talking about cultural exploration and discovery and an element of material and cultures. And Joel talked about linguistic, the idea of the alphabet. And the scanner is one of the tools that make the bridge between the gameplay and that narrative context that you want to discover a number of things.
Still here. We'll find you a route to those captives.
Is the cargo bay.
Again? What do you mean you can't see them? Well, get ready everywhere!
Real eager to meet that person.
Pathfinder, that door up there. It was blocked before.
How about it, Bradley?
Negative. You'll have to scan for something manual.
Another good example of the wide open spaces that we're able to create. I think Frostbite does this really well. These beautiful environments.
Maybe we can reach the door.
But there's also a little bit more dynamism in some of these, where we'll actually, as you can see, the level shifting, and once Ian gets up there and solves this puzzle, the level itself will change again.
Still on their cameras. Callet has filled the hall past that door.
And the captives?
Past them.
Whatever it takes.
Door and crane. Here they come.
So Joel, when you guys were, planning to do something that does PBR, physically based rendering, obviously it lights beautifully. What were some of the challenges and things that you guys were looking at?
So yeah, PBR is a very interesting technology. A lot of games are physically based rendering. And we use a whole bunch of different acronyms for all of our cool features in tech. But I think it's a piece of technology that a lot of new games are going to be using and taking advantage of. But it does force the artist to think about their assets in a very different way. Traditionally, an artist would, they build a model, and then when it goes to be textured, they paint the texture, the diffuse, essentially the color and the bumping on it and all that. They paint that all manually. But PBR forces them to think of things in a more physical, real-world kind of sense. Like, what does the value of metal look like in real life? And they have to understand how to apply that to materials in the game, metal materials in the game. And it was really, really difficult to try and train ourselves to accept the fact that when you see metal in the game, it might, you naturally think it should look black. If it was a surface that's meant to look black, using PBR, it might look gray in the game, but we have to understand that that's accurate. That's how it's meant to look under certain lighting conditions. And then once we actually introduce lighting and bake the lighting into the levels, the materials show exactly how they're meant to look in real life. It's just it was a very complicated mind shift for the artists to not want to just force that color to always look like that color that they're used to seeing. They have to kind of think a few steps down the line to how would that color look once it's finally properly lit in the game. It was a challenge, but in the end, it does provide a more realistic look.
One of the other things, every once in a while, if you see the enemies and they kind of get little shields over them, that's actually Ian's sending his squad mate to attack them. You can send them individually, left, right on the D-pad, or if you hit up, you can send them both at the same time, and they're pretty effective, as you can see.
One of the things, too, that you can see as Ryder is calling out in the banter, he's not as sure as Shepard was. So one of the things that we started with is Ryder is skilled but untested, yep, and grows over the course of the game. So,
yeah, it's very much a story, and not just for Ryder, but for all the people around them. It's Shepard was very much already a hero when we met them. They kind of became a legend. This is a story of a bunch of people kind of coming together and becoming heroes, and it actually carries through. Even the our version of sort of the Citadel Council, the sort of the Nexus and Andromeda Initiative people. They're not the people who were necessarily sent to do it because things went a little poorly when they arrived, and so they're just trying to figure out how to be leaders as well. So it's kind of a theme that carries all the way through.
Getting the hang of this, right?
Cycling power for doors ahead, but it seals the one behind you.
We're not turning back anyway.
You know we're getting real lucky.
Look, some things you just have to count on. Skill, purpose, allies. You have them all in spades.
And if it goes wrong?
It already did. Still better than day one on Helios.
They're bunkered in the next room, Pathfinder. Sniper, maybe two, and I think cages?
Thanks for the lookout.
That was another interesting challenge for the art team, specifically VFX. Because our combat features so many different powers and biotics, we found early on that the VFX looked like a laser light show with the amount of bullets and tracers and biotics and orbs and space magic flying past you. It really did look like a fireworks show, and so we had to find a nice, comfortable balance to not overwhelm the player or look too ADD, while still feeling kind of fresh and flashy and kind of fun and colorful. So it took a lot of iteration to try and find that nice subtle balance. How often do you use this power versus this power? Okay, so this one could be flashier and colorful. This one's used all the time, so let's tone it down and keep it a little bit more subtle. Subtle is one of my key words I use a lot on the floor.
Subtle. I think we're about to get into some spoilery areas. I think we're going to call it right here, right? Yeah.
Giant robots.
Seal the boat.
Robots.
Now's our chance. Hey.
All right. So everyone give Ian a round of applause.
Yes.